tensions ramping up between the United States and Venezuela. President Trump not revealing whether land strikes on the country are imminent, but confirming to NewsNation while on board Air Force One that he has spoken to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Take a look.
New York Times reported that you had a phone call with Maduro. Did you?
I don't want to comment on it. The answer is yes.
NewsNation's Hannah Brandt live at the White House tonight with the very latest. Hannah.
Alex, tonight you heard President Trump confirming there to our Libby Dean he did speak on the phone with the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. He would not share the details of that phone call, however. Now, this all comes amid extreme tension over U.S. strikes on alleged drug boats near Venezuela. The president also going back and forth with the press over a Washington Post report that said War Secretary Pete Hegseth had specifically ordered a second strike to kill crew members on one of these boats after a first strike left survivors. President Trump says he does not think Hegseth issued such an order. Listen.
He didn't even know what people were talking about. So we'll look into it. But no, I wouldn't have wanted that, not a second strike. The first strike was very lethal. It was fine. And if there were two people around, but Pete said that didn't happen.
Does that make you?
I have great confidence.
You say there's no second strike?
I don't know. I'm going to find out about it. But Pete said he did not order the death of those two men.
Do you have any concerns about how those boat strikes have been carried out at all?
Very little, because you can see the boats. You can see the drugs in the boats.
President Trump did spark some alarm on Saturday when he said the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela should be considered closed in its entirety. Maduro's government calling that a threat from President Trump. But President Trump saying he closed the airspace because he considers Venezuela not to be a friendly country, adding tonight we should not read into that move. Alex?
And Hannah, what did the president say about today's meeting in Miami between United States and Ukrainian officials?
Well, we heard him strike a pretty hopeful tone after hours of peace talks that happened earlier today between the U.S. and Ukraine. Secretary of State Marco Rubio led that meeting with the head of Ukraine's Security Council and other top leaders from both countries. Rubio did say afterwards the session was productive, but also said there's no deal just yet, highlighting challenges that remain with not just ending the war, but also with securing Ukraine's future. President Trump saying tonight he's in touch with Rubio and the other U.S. officials and telling our Libby D he does think the talks are going well, though also saying the accusations of corruption in Ukraine are not helpful.
Can you give us an update on what took place in South Florida today, those talks between the U.S. and the Ukrainians?
Well, they're going along, and they're going along well. We want to stop people from being killed. It doesn't have much to do with us. But I'd like to see if we could save a lot of souls. A lot of people are being killed. Last month, we had 27,000 people killed in that ridiculous war that should have never happened. It would have never happened if I were president.
Have you spoken with Rubio and Witkoff since
I have, yeah. I've spoken to them, and they're doing well. Ukraine's got some difficult little problems. They have some difficult problems. But I think Russia would like to see it end, and I know Ukraine would like to see it end.
The president says he does not have a deadline to reach that peace deal, but he did tell reporters he expects Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin next week. Alex?
And Hannah, one more question. The president also giving an update on the National Guard member who was wounded in last week's shooting. What else do we know about that?
Yeah, that National Guard member in a lot of our thoughts right now. We're seeing an outpouring of support and sympathy from across the country. President Trump did confirm to our Libby Dean tonight that he's been in touch with the families of both of the National Guard members who were shot. Listen to what he told her tonight about those conversations.
Have you spoken with Andrew Wolf's family? Can you give us an update on
I have spoken to both families. Well, I mean, I can give you an update. They're devastated. Does that make sense to you?
Of course.
They're devastated.
Can you give us an update on Andrew Wolf's?
Well, as you know, the one is no longer with us, and Andrew is fighting for his life. And his parents are unbelievably great people, highly religious people, and they're praying, and they want everybody to pray for Andrew, and he has a chance to make it.
Libby also asked the president whether he'd invited the Beckstrom and Wolf families to the White House. He said he has extended that invitation, telling them to come whenever they're ready. Alex?
Okay, our thanks to Hannah Brandt there, as well as Libby Dean, getting those questions into the president tonight on Air Force One. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.